Kind of.
Sorry if you didn't see me. I got food poisoning that day. And I didn't realize it till after the show because I threw up everywhere. So I didn't have too many good memories last time I was here. I was hanging over a toilet, keeping my brains out. But you don't need to hear about that. Yes, thank you guys for watching our set and hanging around. We appreciate it. I want to ask you guys something. We've all been in a relationship before, and we all understand maybe the concept of cheating. Somebody you love who cheats on you. And somebody you love or care for just goes and leaves you for another. It's a pretty crappy feeling. I've experienced that before. Some of you guys have, maybe, yes or no? Yeah, it's it tears you up. I mean, it wrecks us. There's nothing worse than really that brokenness that comes from that. And very rarely do we wish good for that person that cheats on us. I remember I dated a girl who cheated on me, and I was so mad. I was not the same person for easily 2-3 months. I couldn't even look at her. There's a story that's similar to this, but actually way worse. I was just in high school. Just a dumb high school fling. But there's a way worse occasion. So there's a man, his name was Hosea, and he married this woman named Gomer. So I know it's a crazy name. That was her name. And he married her. He married her knowing something about her. Actually knew that she would be unfaithful to him. That sounds insane. Insane to me, it sounds crazy. But he married her to show her the love that he had, that he was willing to keep a covenant with her. They got married and they had children, but it wasn't soon after they got married that Gomer, she just left. She went away from him and would be gone nights on end. And he knew where she was. She was sleeping with other men. She was just going and sleeping around. And he would plead with her to come home, and she'd finally come home, and he would say, "I'm so glad you come home. Don't leave again. I love you. Don't leave me again to go be with other lovers." And she would say, they give me things that you never were willing to give me. But Hosea was a good man. He sought to give her every good thing he could give her. But she just wanted more. She wanted something more. She thought that she could get a better love. What happened was that this happened time after time after time. And Hosea just continued to be patient with her. And every time she would come home, he would receive her, but she would just leave again. But there was one time that she left that she didn't come back. There was one time that she left. And what happened was that she was with one of her lovers. And she had been with so many men and given herself away so many times that she became destitute, poor, and broken, unwilling to come home to Hosea. She didn't want to go back to him, but she was poor and on the streets. And so she had to sell herself essentially as a slave, a sex slave, a prostitute, to have sex with men so she could make money, unwilling to go back to Hosea. What happened was that she got so deep in this slavery that she was owned by a man. And she was owned, and she was a slave to another man who was trying to sell her to somebody else to be their slave. Hosea heard about this. He heard about his wife was being sold. As soon as he heard, he went into the city. And you can imagine he's looking for his wife, and he's asking people, how embarrassing must it have been for a man to say, "Have you seen my wife?" Like, "Oh, we know your wife. She's been with every man in the city." How embarrassing that must have been. But he didn't care. He wanted his wife. And so he finally went and he found her. And he saw her. She was locked up in the stocks like an animal. And he had brought all the money that he had. He brought everything that he owned because he was willing to give everything to get her back. And that was the cost. He said, I will buy her. That's my wife. I will buy her. I love her. And he went and he bought his wife that day. A woman who should have been his in the first place, who ran from him, and he brought her home. And by God's grace, the marriage was restored. And that's a story of beautiful love. But it's just a small picture. See, that story's in the Bible. That story's in the Bible for a reason, to show us a really, really small picture of something much grander and much greater. So I'll tell you what, in that story, How we think, man, I want to be like Hosea and love like that. We're not able to love like that. What that story is telling us is that we're much more like Gomer, this prostitute, this harlot, because we have forsaken God just like that. For many of you, as you were thinking about this woman, you're thinking how terrible and how disgusting she is. Who could treat somebody like that? We do. And it's not just some man that we treat like this. We treat God in that way. That he said, I'm willing to give good things to you. I'm willing to be a good God. I am a good God, and he only desires what's best for you. Did he not give you life? You were a thought on God's mind. And he looked down and he said, I'll create you out of his love. And as soon as we're able to make our own choices, we go our own way and we run like Gomer did, a harlot. And we chase after these vain pleasures that don't fulfill us. And he calls us to come back to him and says, come, I'm willing to receive you. And we say, screw you. There's greater love out there. Your love's crap. We look at the love that God has to offer, which is unfailing, unconditional, and we call it garbage. The thing is that we are slaves in our sin. We think that there's something greater out there, but there isn't. And I'll tell you this, many of you have been running down that road and you know that there's nothing for you. And yet many of you will hear what I said today and you'll run even further because you won't go to him. And I'll tell you this, it doesn't matter where you run to. It doesn't matter what sort of bondage you think that you're in. He's a God who's willing to purchase people like that. Because when Christ came, he came bringing the only purchase, the only thing that could pay to buy us out of slavery, which was his life, the precious, perfect life of God.
Amen.
When he went to that cross, he said, you know what? I'm going to buy the right for despicable whores like us to come and to be in God's presence. So when he died on that tree, he was paying a debt for people like us. He was buying us out of the slavery of our sin because we would not come to him and we could not. But Christ bought that for us by shedding his blood, dying on that cross, suffering God's wrath, suffering his anger that should be poured out upon us. Millions of crosses on that hill where we should have died. But instead the Son of God did because of his great love for sinners, not for righteous people, not for people who grew up in a Christian home, not just for those people, for sinners. And I'll tell you that we all identify as being sinners. Is that Christ came for people like that. And that is the gospel, that he's willing to receive you. No manner of sin is too great for him. And if you think it's too good to be true, you need a love like that. You need a love that's too good to be true. Because you're settling for the world's love, that's obvious, and it's garbage. And he offers you a true love that is amazing. And I pray that you guys will come to see he loves you in that way. This next song is called Majesty.